Did you know one of the biggest mistakes that you can make in your backpacking has nothing to do with the gear on your back? You could spend upwards of $1,000 on your backpack, your tent, your sleeping bag, your sleeping pad, your stove, all of the gear that you carry on your back. But if you neglect to take care of one thing, you could end up with a absolutely miserable backpacking experience and leave a negative taste of what backpacking is. So what is this big mistake I'm talking about? It's your feet and neglecting to take care of your feet and have good foot care techniques all ready to go for when you head out on a backpacking trip. So by the end of this video, you're gonna have 3 critical pieces of information that are gonna help prevent blisters and foot pain and are going to help you just be more comfortable on the trail. First things first, we gotta understand the recipe of how blisters and foot pain can start. We all know, going back to our very elementary first aid education, is anytime that you are creating friction on your skin, you are opening up the opportunity for a blister to happen. That friction is going to create hot spots, and that hot spot is soon going to be a release of the skin from itself, and you get a blister of pus and liquid underneath that friction area. That can happen from just poor fitting shoes. It can happen from debris inside of your shoes. It can also happen from poor sock selection. Understanding how all of those things combined can create a really miserable experience, then you know how to mitigate it and make changes and adjustments and decisions to make it so that you're preventing that pain and those blisters from forming. I think it's also important to note that blisters are most often going to happen on the heels, on the ball of your foot, and around your toes. And because everybody's foot shape is different, it's important to understand where are the most vulnerable places on your foot for you to most often or most commonly get a blister to form. All right, tip number 1 has to do with sock selection. I think this is one of the most overlooked pieces of foot care when it comes to just preventing blisters and such. You want a sock that does not have any kind of cotton in it. Cotton is one of those recipe items that just you almost can guarantee you're gonna get a blister if you wear cotton socks. Cotton does not dry quickly, cotton also stretches, and it's just not a great fiber to have on your foot when you are walking. So I prefer some kind of synthetic sock or a wool blend, or even there are bamboo options out there as well that make for a really great sock option. The best thing about these sock options, like Smart Wool or Darn Tough or Bombas or Swiftwick, these are great sock options because they dry quickly. They don't stretch like crazy on your foot, so you're not gonna create these areas or little pockets within the shoe that are gonna create hot spots because the sock is stretched and now folded over itself and that kind of thing. Sock selection makes a huge, huge difference in how well your feet are able to dry and be comfortable and eliminate or just reduce the amount of hot spots possible to happen while you're out there hiking with the backpack on, specifically having all that weight on your back. So as we're talking about prevention and having pain on the trail and foot care and stuff, let's talk about like mental care and taking care of yourself mentally. And that's where I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, which is BetterHelp. Now, I've talked about BetterHelp before on the channel, and I have just thrived on having access to a therapist. When I thought previously, there's no way that I'm in a spot where I need a therapist to help me work through things. And I was wrong. Like, therapy is such a productive and amazing way to work through even the littlest things that are happening in your life. I have loved so much having access to a therapist and just the service that BetterHelp is as a website to make it easy to have access to somebody that can help you work through things and just ask the right questions to help you be in a better place mentally. And it's amazing. So I highly, highly recommend BetterHelp. Such an amazing service. I've got a link down in the description for you to check out BetterHelp, and I want to thank them for supporting the channel and sponsoring this video today. The next thing I want to talk about has to do with shoe selection and boot selection for those of you that like to wear boots. Why am I running? Well, it's the fact that what you put on your feet should fit your foot really nice so that I could run and enjoy myself and not have to worry about my feet getting totally torn up. But seriously, shoe selection is key to proper foot care. Now, when it comes to shoe selection, I think it is so critical to take your time on this very important purchase. It would be wrong for me to sit here and say these Danner Trail 2650s are the best shoe on the market, and these are what every single person should use when they're out hiking. Now, these happen to be my personal favorite hiking shoes. They make it possible for me to enjoy myself the most out on the trail. Of any other shoe I've used, I have the least foot problems wearing this shoe. But that's not going to be the case for everybody, because your foot shape is going to be different than mine. Maybe you've got a really wide toe box. Maybe you've got flat feet or really high arches, or you have toes that are shaped in a different way that if you had a shoe that was too narrow in the toe box, that you are creating blister opportunities at that point. So I think it's really critical to understand that your investment into shoes is going to make or break your backpacking trip. So go to a store that has a wide selection of shoes available and try on as many different shoes as you can. Also understand that when you're hiking, your feet are going to swell a little bit. So make sure that you're buying a shoe a little bit larger than maybe you would normally, but don't go too big because you don't want to have a sloppy, loose-fitting shoe. You want something that's gonna sit on your foot really nice, but is not gonna have pressure points, is not gonna have areas of the shoe that are creating hot spots, which then turn into blisters. That's why you want to spend so much time choosing the right shoe for you. If it's a trail runner, awesome. If it's a lightweight hiker, awesome. If it's a boot, go for it. Use what works for you. So tip number 3 is around this idea of prevention. You could spend all this time getting the right shoes and the right socks and still have blisters develop. Well, how does that happen? If you have the right socks and the right shoes, shouldn't that be enough? Well, it's not always the case, because a lot of what can happen with a blister forming has to do with environmental factors. Is it really hot outside, and are your feet hotter than they would be just hanging out at home? That's something that can lead to just an increased amount of opportunity for blisters. What if you are on really aggressive bouldery terrain? That can also mean that your foot is moving within the shoe in a way that it wouldn't normally on a nice, flat, groomed trail. So there's a couple things that I like to employ that help me make sure that I am preventing a blister. The first is, anytime I'm walking down the trail and I start to feel anything weird with my foot, I stop. And I make sure that I take my shoe off or just adjust what might be taking place, because if I stop then I can handle it and take care of it in that moment, as opposed to 2 miles later down the trail and I'm like, suck, I should have stopped, and now I've got a big blister on the side of my foot. The second is really simple. Anytime you stop for lunch or you take an extended break, take your shoes off and your socks off at that same time. Let your feet breathe and cool off, and let your shoes dry out a little bit. Let your socks dry a little bit. This will make a huge, huge difference in being able to prevent blisters happening on your feet and creating a bunch of pain and issues that you might have from not taking care of those things when they happen. All right, so there's my tips for blister prevention and just overall foot care when you're out on a backpacking trip. If you've got additional tips or recommendations, leave them down in the comments below. Thanks for watching today, guys. If you're not subscribed to the channel, do subscribe. Thanks for your support. Hope you have an awesome day. See you later.